One question that sometimes comes up in the transformation of curves is the question of why a positive 3 on the outside of the parentheses causes the graph to shift up, but a negative 2 on the inside of the parentheses causes a shift to the right, because often people associate a negative in the x direction with shifting to the left. So to answer this question, I first want to go to what I call the basic graph. And in this case, the basic function that's being transformed is, you can call it f of x, but you can also think of it as y is equal to x squared. And so that's the shape of a parabola, which passes through the origin. And it looks something like this. And if I take this basic graph, y is equal to, let's say, x squared, and add on a number like 3, most people can see that this plus 3 adds 3 units to each point in the y direction. So most people would see that the y coordinate of each point, and consequently the whole graph, shifts upward by 3 units. And we would imagine then that the modified graph would look something like this. What's less intuitive is the idea that modifying the graph by subtracting 2 from the x-coordinate inside the parentheses should cause a shift to the right. And so let's investigate that a little more carefully. I'm going to rewrite this function with f of x replaced with y, so this is going to look like y is equal to, parentheses, x minus 2 squared plus 3. And now what I'd like to do is to subtract 3 from both sides so that the y minus 3 on the left is equal to x minus 2 parentheses squared on the right. And what we're seeing now is that the x and the y coordinates are represented in what I would call parallel fashion. They're both represented with binomial factors. And we're seeing that the binomial factor of y minus 3 produces an upward or positive y shift, and therefore the x minus 2 we should expect to produce a positive x shift, which in this case is to the right. To make an analogy, there are other situations when a binomial factor produces a result which has opposite sign. One analogy is in a factored equation. For example, if you have something like x minus 5 times parentheses x plus 1, and you have factored and set that equal to 0. And then we create solutions based on each of these factors, and what we see is that if we set the first factor, x minus 5 equal to 0, we add 5 to both sides, and you end up with the solution that x is equal to a positive 5. Something similar happens with the second factor. We end up with the solution that x is equal to a negative 1. And so the solution has the opposite sign as the number inside the binomial factor. And over here, again, we see something similar, that when you have a binomial factor, the sign that's inside has the opposite effect. In this case, we want to move 3 units in the positive y direction, and for the x minus 2 squared, we want to move 2 units in the positive x direction. So to finish off the graph, we can say that, again, the subtracting of 2 from x means we'll move the vertex 2 units to the right, and we will move the vertex 3 units up. And so we will anchor this parabola here. And drawing the graph, it looks something like this.